Thanks for tuning in. Well, let's continue our talk about the upcoming legislative session. You say jobs will continue to be a primary focus. What will you be looking at to put more people to work?
Well, certainly continuing down the legal reforms that we led with in 2015. The regulatory reforms are critical as well. But you know what? The lesson that we could learn every single time that historically that we get a business to come to West Virginia, it's because we gave them a deal. We made them a tax deal, or we cut them a credit, or something to entice them to come. And those are the clues that I think we got to look to figure out what we need to change in order to ask those businesses to be here. Because I'll tell you why. When we do that, we're picking winners and losers. What about the business that's already here, and all of a sudden they're at a competitive disadvantage because we give the new guy a tax credit, but the guy that's toughed it out all these years and and put up with all the over-regulation, the burdensome nonsense that comes out of Charleston, and we don't give him anything. We don't even tell him thank you. You know, as I talk to economic development people, they always want to talk about, well, I'm talking to this company from this state and this one, but I say, but have you knocked on the doors of the businesses that are already here? You know, maybe, I mean, we have our own example right here in Bluefield. What about the Krogers? What if somebody had knocked on their door and said, hey, how are things going? And maybe they would have said, hey, not too good. You know, we hit the end of our lease, we're probably out of here. The community might have come together. We might have taken a different look and said, wow, we got to get behind this. So I think it's very important that we look at the businesses that we already have and make sure we're doing right by them.
Sure, and you mentioned West Virginia has just been named the most regulated state in the nation. What does that mean exactly?
Well, my understanding is we fell from 48th to 50th on Forbes' list. Great, we had 2 spaces we could go down, and we did. But, you know, there's an amount of that we can handle legislatively. It's tough to just pass a law that says, hey, let's have less regulations. We can pass laws that say regulations and rules, laws can sunset, say they go on the books for 5 years, and then in 5 years that agency has to come back and say, hey, this was good, or, you know, we need it, or we don't need it, or maybe we need to tweak it up a little bit, but let's review it every 5 years and make sure that it makes sense, that it's doing what it was intended to do. Part of that can be legislatively. I am running for governor, and one of the reasons I bring a business prism to everything. I look through a business prism, and I look to state government the same way. And I think it takes an executive that wants to reform and overhaul and modernize state government. It takes a different way of looking at things, and a lot of the over-regulation can be solved by our executive putting the right people in place and driving a new culture. You know, I wish that state employees would look at our citizen taxpayers who actually pay their wage as customers rather than, you know, somebody that you got to deal with. So I think the quicker that we get an idea in state government that, you know, we're here to help and not hinder, not hurt, not get in the way, not constantly have this culture of let me tell you why we can't do it. So we have a lot of work to do in that regard, but it can be done. We can turn that around. And you know, with all the budget pressures that we have, that doesn't cost any money. That's a freebie. That's a different way of thinking. So, you know, I think we got to go after the regulatory reforms hard.
And you're going to be searching for loopholes in the tax code as well this session. Obviously, that's something parties agree on to bring in revenue for the state.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we're not looking to raise taxes now. I mean, it seems like the easy thing to do, but as we studied the tax code, we did find some loopholes, some exclusions, some people that don't pay sales tax, for instance, on consumer services. So I don't look at that so much as a tax increase as just closing a loophole. Maybe there was probably a reason for it at some point in time, but we have to go back and review. Is that reason still valid? And if it isn't, we can make some small changes, and it'll be a help. But you know, we're going to have to, you know, like I said before, it's about doing business a different way. It's about doing more with less. It's the same thing that any family deals with when they have tough financial times as well.
And many people have suggested raising the tobacco tax and putting that into other things like the PEIA insurance. Do you see something like that happening?
You know, the PEIA insurance is something that we're going to have to take up. I will tell you this, you know, it's political chicanery going on up there. They're pointing fingers. They're saying it's the legislature's fault. The board of PEIA for 5 years they've mismanaged that program drastically. They had the luxury of overpaid reserves. They had more money in the reserve account than was necessary. So for 5 years, while everybody else's health insurance has been going up, and we've all struggled in the private sector with that every single year, PEIA has just been level. They bled down those reserves. Now all of a sudden, there are no more. Well, there's the reserve that it takes to run the fund, but there's no over reserve. So now all of a sudden the alarm bells are ringing. I'm working very, very closely with the governor. We will figure out ways. We have to take care of our state employees. We have an obligation, and we will. You mentioned the cigarette tax. That's an interesting subject, and here's why. Without getting too far in the weeds, people just say, well, if we raise it $1 a pack, it brings in $120 million or whatever the number is. Here's why that's not true. We have, in the southern part of the state, we have Virginia and Kentucky, which are both tobacco producers that are already less than West Virginia on the taxes. On the northern side, we have Ohio and PA, which are substantially more, about $1 more. So if we raise the price $1 up there, people all of a sudden aren't going to say, there's no reason for them to come into West Virginia to buy their cigarettes. They'll just stay in Ohio or PA. We raise them $1 down here, and we're just going to drive people across the border into Virginia or Kentucky to buy their cigarettes. So it isn't as simple as how many packs of cigarettes do we sell times $1 will kill the business. So you can have a big increase and maybe not bring in a single penny to the state coffers. So there's a fine line there, and I don't know what it is. It's easy to say it's a sin tax, make people pay because they're costing the system more, and quite frankly, there's wisdom to that. But I don't think it's $1. If it's anything, and maybe half of that, and maybe that we can run that balance and that fine line and actually have it increase our revenue a little bit.
Sure. Well, it's time for another break, but coming up here on In Focus, we'll be talking about the drug epidemic, that is, and even a race for the White House. Keep it here.
When something is missing from the picture, it doesn't make sense. Without the right people, your work site is just a site. Your office is just a space. Let's Train West Virginia has grant funding for on-the-job training in today's in-demand careers. Workers learn while they earn, and companies can be reimbursed $1,000 per eligible new hire. So qualified employees and satisfied employers complete the picture. Learn more at letstrainwv.com.
Here's your sandwich, miss.
Oh, thank you.
And your burger.
Awesome, thank you.
And your bowl of boiling water, sir.
Good morning and welcome back to In Focus. I'm Courtney Clark. Thank you for joining us. I'm pleased to be joined by Senate President Bill Cole. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
Well, let's talk about President Obama's regulations, the EPA, war on coal. We've heard all the different terms. We've done a lot, I would say, in West Virginia. What do you think?